Yeah. All right. We're recording.
Recording.
Well, ADV is the acronym I have to use because of all the censorship. But I've been a healer, an eclectic healer for, 20 years. And I have an undergrad degree in agricultural biotechnology from the University of Lethbridge. I then traveled and saw a lot of places that probably a lot of people are from right now, Central America and India and so forth. And then I picked up extra training in homeopathy and Ayurvedic medicine. Then I completed a 4-year medical doctorate from the Canadian College of Naturopathic Medicine. I walked away from licensing because I saw the corruption going on, even in the halls of holistic medicine or so-called holistic medicine. And really want to be a true nature doctor and not this aberration where you're still promoting biological attacks basically through quaxines and other suppressives. And I just kept seeking truth, and I'll never stop. And I started Yum Naturals Emporium when I got pregnant in 2011 is when 2011, 2012, I moved out of the city, started this business and started making my own natural products, which I couldn't find really, really clean stuff. So I had to design it and went from there. And I had an all natural birth out of the system. And I put my Canadian business into the private as well because of attacks from the likes of Health Canada and other corrupt agencies that serve the pharmaceutical cartel. And, then I found out all kinds of things that we're going to talk about today, like the false germ theory and that viruses don't exist and contagion is not how it's been described. And I just kept diving and diving and diving and started talking about that in probably around 2016, 2017. Then this pandemic, the scam hit. And then I was very vocal about that. And I got, chastised, of course, and harassed and charged and all kinds of nonsense from that, and became, a freedom fighter like most of us now who are realizing that the cabal, or whatever you want to call these satanic elites, they're not really elite in my book, but these monsters want to do to humanity again. And we're exposing them, we're doing the work, and it's a lot of work, I'll tell you. And I'm sure you're feeling that too. But we're going to just keep sharing truth, keep researching, keep exposing them, and do what God has put us here to do. So
yeah, wonderful. And I'm Carmen Hunter. For anyone who doesn't know me, I am the founder of the Institute for Functional Health Coaching. I am a certified functional health and wellness coach. More than that, I'm a type AAA personality and an advocate for those who can't speak for themselves. And I am firmly grounded and convicted in what I believe. And when I get to that point, whatever it may be, there is no stopping me. It is the hill that I die on. And this is one of those things. Once you know, you cannot unknow. You just can't unknow. And so I feel very privileged, Amanda, to have you here again. And just want to let you know that anytime that I start to feel a little bit like, God, is this ever going to end? Is this going to, what is going on here? I think about you and several other people that you have this attitude. And I want to bring that attitude into this call today of compassion and kindness and understanding and all of the things, right, that we need to be able to move forward. I feel like too many people are focused on the negative, the bad, the awful, the horrible. And I feel like that's counterproductive to what we're trying to achieve, which is to shed light on what we actually can do and how we can get our power back from the powers that be, so to speak, right? Yeah. So thank you for that. So let's dive right in. I've got a couple of questions. I want to keep it, we've got a lot of people that are in here that are scared, that believe that viruses are contagious. A lot of the lay person and a lot of wellness professionals too. So we're kind of speaking to two audiences today. So the question is, what are viruses? That's just the most basic question. What is a virus? And then right after that, I want you to kind of go into the germ and terrain theory idea and what that is. What's the definition of that? Because people are confused about that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, what is a virus? Well, by their definition, we pretty much know what they're telling us it is, right? So I don't think we need to reiterate their ideas, but what the word comes from the Latin poison, and you have to dive into history. If you don't do historical work, you're not going to know anything. You're not going to understand how we got from them this lie to now, because it's generations long, right? So people are born into the ideology, and that's what's so difficult about a lot of it is you're told by your parents, you want to believe your parents, you're told by governments and agencies and a structure and a propaganda machine around it. And you have a confirmational bias that you play with in your life to automatically assume that when you are feeling a certain way, it must be that. And then you go to the agents that disseminate the lies, the doctors and the nurses and so forth, the scientists, they, virologists, immunologists, all these people, and they're indoctrinated as well. And they will have that confirmation bias. So they will always, instead of doing proper science where you double check and make sure that you're not assuming anything, it's already lumped in and it's baseline assumption, and nobody's really checking to see that it's accurate. And so we're really not having a science, we're having a religion. So if you understand that it's gone into a religious cult ideology and belief system, and that the science is biased, then it helps you understand how all of this froth of studies and just garbage has been put out. It looks so professional and it looks like we've advanced in all this, but it's so the opposite. And once you can actually break down the lingo and how they're doing it and what they think they're seeing, now you understand that illusion to them feels real. But the problem is that the history of it, when you go back, it was a created ideology for political gain. That's how a virus came to be, through fraud. And if you go further back, the belief of even someone getting sick at all came down to religion, in that God was punishing those people. So if a bunch of people got sick, then it was the churches and the Jesuits and these groups that started to say, oh, well, you must have offended God, or a demon has entered you, and that's why you're sick. That's the base actually of germ theory, is in this idea that you've made a mistake to God, and the demons have the spirits have taken you over. And then it got more materialized into particles and things. But of course, these are most people wouldn't be able to see these things or visualize these things. So it's a perfect cover story when you want to manipulate populations or win wars, or put in mandates, or all the things of your game. It's a perfect scapegoat, because no one can prove it other than these hi-hats who have this so-called microscopes or whatever. And the problem is when it came around war, some of it. So there's different subsections of stories that you need to learn about. And it goes way back 1600s, 1500s as well. So like Dr. Lanka was the one, when I started to realize this is not right, because I knew that these lineages that are inside of us are pleomorphic or polymorphic, which means the germ, which just means like a pluripotent cell that can change into something else, into another cell type, will change based on terrain, for one. It's influential, but one thing can morph to another. So if you have a bacteria that can morph from a rod shape into a cockeye, or a round shape, or a chain of those things, and then maneuver back into a different shape, when you look and study the bacteriology and all of those beliefs, they have it categorized like this shape and this thing with this cell coding is that disease. Like, the germ theory is this thing, if you have it in you, it makes that disease. But when you understand that these are pleomorphic, polymorphic shapes, then how do you do that? Because how do you know, or how are you controlling your studies to prove that it's not changing from one thing to another inside your body, or that one thing that you took out of a living blood and put it under, intense heat of a microscope and staining techniques and flattening and squishing and adding other medium to it, that you haven't altered it already? So there's a lot of steps in the germ theory that are very problematic, and not good science has been done. So that's one really important thing. So what a virus is basically breakdown products, solvents or soaps, or exudates of our normal, natural healing processes. So when your body makes damage or has poisons, the body needs to get rid of those things. It's very clear about what is self and what is not self. It's always remaking cells, rebuilding tissues, removing waste, whether it's internal metabolic waste of your own doing or from an exogenous source coming in and causing problems. It must always do housekeeping. And those particles have been said to have been the cause because they've been found at the scene of the crime. But that's just an error of logic and again, bad science to say that just because you found something, I mean, everyone's watched crime shows and stuff. It's just because someone's holding the knife doesn't mean they stuck it in them, right? So we have to go back and we have to understand that what if the diseased tissue came first, and that's the disease process, and the end result are the breakdown products that we find in the admixture, the soup, or the results. And that is just a breakdown and not a causation. We have to prove that it's causation. And that's using something like, say, Koch's postulates, which were manipulated to try to shoehorn the ideology into the bigger picture, which doesn't hold water. They had to actually manipulate Koch's postulates to try and make it work. And then when the science doesn't fit into the model, they just discard that science. So when there's an alternative explanation, it doesn't go into the dogma. And that's the problem. And that's why we're in a scientific revolution now, because there's enough evidence slowly building that is starting to topple the scientism or the ideology, and which is well embedded into the culture as well. And it's all superstition. It all came from superstition, and it's still superstition now.
So believable, though. They've made it so believable, honestly. Yeah. Like, you know, that people don't even question it. It's unbelievable how believable they've made it, right? And I've seen your interview, and I've looked, you know, I haven't gotten the book yet because time. With David Parker and Don Lester. I've watched that interview. I've watched several of their interviews with great interest. And what I find fascinating, one of the things that you said in one of your interviews basically was like, you guys, you're not indoctrinated, you're not doctors, you don't have this pre-programmed idea about what should happen. So they walked into it with an open mind, which is kind of what we're asking the world to do right now. Open your mind, you know, crack it open a little bit and wipe the slate clean of what everything that you've ever heard to be true about viruses and how you get sick, right? Yeah. So let's go back for just a second, because I want to make sure. You said we've been through this before, and you said something about in 2017 that this happened already, that you were chastised and all that. So tell us about that. Like, I'm sure everyone's going, wait, did COVID happen back then? Because to many people, they think right now is the first time this has ever happened, right?
No, I mean, they've been doing these reset events where they erase history, rewrite the history, whether they burn the books or, you know, put in the AI to destroy half the internet, whatever, you know, they every 100 to 150 years, they have a big culling event because they're all eugenicists that believe that there's only a pure race of people and they're it, and we're not, and we're their slave race. And there's too many of us, there's too many mouths to feed, sort of idea. And now they have the robotics coming in, so they definitely need way less slaves. And they're moving into their next situation. And they have, this goes back way to Egypt. I mean, this goes way back. This is, I think, why it's so easy to fool people in their short-sightedness. And you destroy the historians, right? You alter the history. So how are you supposed to research unless you have a better internal barometer for BS, you know, which most people don't, unfortunately, because they've poisoned us so significantly that most people's internal direction or intuition is gone. You have your gut intuition, that's messed up. GMOs and all the terrible foods and water and so forth are giving us. Our pineal gland, you know, which is part of our inner knowing, which is like an instantaneous knowing. It doesn't have to be going through this didactic process, is shut off by fluoride and other poisons. So, you know, they've got us where they want us to some degree. Unfortunately for them, we're waking up faster than they can put the lid on things. And I think every cycle, there's an opportunity for each sort of side of the coin to decide who is it going to be good for a while, or is the evil going to reign, or, you know, whatever this shadow work that's happening right now. Are we going to do it? Are we going to become spiritual adults or not? And then that gets into all other kinds of, discussion. But, if you believe this reality as that's it, then you're not going to understand a lot of this stuff. Like if you don't understand, subtle energies and electromagnetic fields and vibration and all that, and that the unseen, then you're going to be confused because they've put everything into the material, right? So everything has to have some sort of material substance in order to exist. But we know, but from even the double slit experiment, that the scientists' ideas or beliefs can sway the outcome of the experiment, right? So there's more to the story than meets the eye. And so there's a lot of work there's a lot of unschooling or unlearning that you have to do first, especially if you've gone through a lot of schooling. Like I went through so much schooling, but something about the way I was is a lot of it didn't take with me. A lot of the programming never really sat with me too long because I wanted always to know really why I was here and what was this about. And I already knew that there were liars and con men and all these things going on. So I was a little more cautious with what I was being told, and I questioned authority, and a lot of people don't question authority, which my teachers didn't like me because of that, because I'd be like, well, that's an interesting theory that you're presenting as fact, but I don't know that sounds right in accordance with natural nature principles. Because if you take it right back to nature, you'll always find the answer, right? So anybody who's really done some incredible work, like Victor Schauberger, for example, understanding that water always wants to coil and turn. And once he understood the nature of water, he saw the implications into all other things. And he was able to, for example, change the way water was flowing down a river to prevent erosion of the banks just by adding rocks underneath to ensure that the river was curling properly, right? This sort of stuff. And
this is so basic. This is nature. I mean, and when what you were just talking about, unlearning a bunch of things and unlearning and then relearning and whatnot, to me, I always come back to this being a spiritual battle, honestly. A spiritual battle, spiritual warfare, call it whatever you want. But, we have been programmed to believe exactly the opposite of what God intends for us. And that is, we have everything that we need in nature. We have everything we need. This is flipped us upside down, right? Turned everything upside down. And I'm the same as you. I'm the person that's like, hold on a second, that doesn't make sense. So wait a minute before we go back to class. I'm sorry, but it's one reason I didn't finish college, because I tried to find a place that I could feel like I could learn and understand and find a career that made sense to me. And I basically could not. I'm like, food pyramid, what the hell is that? What? No. So I never went back, and I believe, people like you and people out there in the world that actually do this kind of work on their own because they want to learn more and because they're genuinely curious. Those are the people I like to learn from, because it's a never ending process, right?
Yeah. And understanding that there's a control agenda. And I think people have a hard time also because of the propaganda, believing that there might be a small group of people that are blood tied and that take oaths and do strange ritual to continue a lineage of their bloodline. And they only will pass down hidden or esoteric knowledge to their family lineage. And so imagine you take all the information from the Library of Alexandria, which you happen to burn down, and then only your family gets to know the truths on how this whole place works and et cetera. And you're sworn an oath, like a Masonic oath, to never speak of it again, or else your soul is in danger by your own family, and it's run like a mafia, it's run like a mob. And so I don't know, there's lots of speculation over what these creatures are or whatever. But again, if you study Egypt and you understand who these pharaohs and so forth were, it all comes from them to now still. And the more I study that, the more it helps me understand what we're dealing with here and why they have still the same symbols that they put even in Parliament and all the Antiquitech and where that all came from. And, it just opens up like a lotus, more and more petals of this reality that almost seems never ending. So it's brave work Yeah, like once you start to realize that that's a fraud, then what's the next lie? If everything's a lie, now you have to basically, I find it easier just to throw away all the belief systems and try to work to see, well, is that true? Does that ring true? Then that gets brought back in, you know? So I went through a lot of those purges, like back in 2017, I just purged it. And I just felt like, oh, I feel like I have to, that virus thing isn't sitting with me now because of studying isopathy. When I went to India, Ayurvedic has no contagion theories. There's no such thing. Ancient Chinese medicine, traditional Chinese medicine, there's no contagion. It doesn't exist. It has either you have a wind invasion in the back of the neck that creates like some of those cold and flu symptoms, or you have a poisoning, and that's your body's cleaning system to get rid of poison. That's it. And same thing with Ayurvedic. It's all being poisoned. You either poison yourself with food, medicine, suppressive stuff, stress, emotions, all of that. But external causation is not what we think. Like there's subtle energy fields that, you know, get affected. We have EMF poisonings as well, which are really not even included in the idea of how we get sick. You go to a doctor, do you think they're asking you, well, did the 5G towers just go up around you? Or, you know, what's your EMF reading in the background of your house? Or where are you sleeping next to plugs and dirty electricity? Like they don't even consider it, right? Which means, are they good scientists? No, of course not, because they would consider all possibilities to why you might be sick. And we have to open our minds now and take back our power and realize that it's easy to just blame some invisible thing for why we're sick, rather than going, oh, you know what? It's because I'm not taking care of my body. I'm, you know, I'm poisoning myself on a daily basis. I'm trusting those who have an agenda to make a lot of money off of me and my illness. And I don't need to play the victim anymore. I'm going to get empowered and I'm going to take it back from them. And I'm going to make decisions about my own health, which they're rapidly and really in a pushy way trying to make sure you don't have. They don't want you to have those choices, right? And say, hey, maybe I can take care of my own body and detox my body so I don't get a seasonal cold or flu, which is just your body detoxing wastes. And the symptoms are the body healing. It's not, oh, I caught it, now I have symptoms, and the symptoms are bad and make it go away and suppress it. That's insane to me. When you understand the holism and how the body works together, to suppress a natural process of the body, again, when you appreciate and understand nature, you know that the body's not doing it because it's stupid. It's doing it because that's a process that's natural and endemic to you to heal you, and you don't go messing with it. You help it. And the more you help it, the easier it becomes. The more you suppress it, the worse it becomes. Yes. And of course, look at our healthcare. I mean, just look at the chronic disease rate and the cancer and the autism and all this stuff. I mean, the proof's in the pudding. If this all was wonderful stuff, we would be living to 150. We would never catch any sort of think we're catching any sort of thing. You know, it wouldn't happen. Right.
It's just, they've scared us. They've scared us into it's fear porn, really. They've scared people into sickness, because when you're fearful, of course, fear has the lowest vibration, I believe, of all energy. But when you're fearful, then you're stressed, and then your body starts to react to that stress. And the minute you walk out the door after 9 months of being locked up or whatnot, you know, you expose yourself to an insult like air and chemtrails that are being sprayed over your head, and all of a sudden you've got COVID, or you've got the flu, or you've got something, right? But really, if we didn't know, if we weren't scared into this kind of thing, and just pretend that we weren't programmed that way, and we walked out and we started to not feel well, we might say something like, you know, I didn't get enough sleep last night, or maybe I shouldn't have eaten that pizza and drank all that wine, or maybe I had this, or maybe that. I believe that we would be more instinctually exploring our own behaviors and what we've done to maybe make ourselves not feel well, that our body is sending that janitor in to sweep up the mess, right? Which is, I mean, we're miracles, you know, we're miracles. So tell me this, a couple of things. One, but AIDS, but West Nile, by the way, which people are now, did you hear about the big West Nile virus thing that's going across the United States, by the way? Have you heard that? People who have been vaccinated have been blaming having to end up in the ICU. I know a doctor that this happened to, and a couple other people too. They claim to have been bitten or whatever a mosquito does to you by a mosquito that has West Nile. So it's not the vaccine that they got. It's a West Nile, you know, virus. So what do you tell people when they say, but my friend had AIDS, or I got this, or whatever? What's the answer for that?
Well, when people talk like that, they're not thinking. They're just saying, they're making bad arguments. So bad arguments are biases or illogical twists of what they're trying to justify. So first, that's an assumption. Okay, that's not fact. To say, oh, well, because of this, because the doctor said, or any of those things, because a test said, none of that is valid. Those PCR-based tests, or even those antibody tests, are incorrect. And so Stefan Lanka talks about the circular argument in science, where you make a fake test essentially to find your genetic information inside your body. So when you break down tissue, you have waste nucleic acid materials, and then you have your own lineages come to eat the tissues and get the wastes out. And that material will be in there as well. The genome will be in there. So say you want to find a little piece of, they won't get all the genome. The genome's huge. They'll have a little piece of it that they'll put in a PCR, and they'll try to find that little piece inside your body. And then if you test enough of those pieces, or they ramp up the cycle threshold, you'll be tested positive. But it's irrelevant because it doesn't mean anything. It's actually an absolute meaningless test. It just says that they found a piece of DNA or RNA inside your tissues, which it could have come from anywhere and is part of a removal process. So what they could say is, oh, it looks like your body's getting rid of a lot of wastes right now. And let's see if we can find other particles as well in there. And if they did that, then they would say, oh, yes, you have HIV, you have West Nile, you have all of these diseases. They would find them all.
Mm-hmm.
They would find them all in anybody who's going through various levels of process, depending also on their admixture of nutrient density. So West Nile, you'll find there are extremely vitamin C deficient. And vitamin C is pretty much the cure for Ebola, West Nile, a lot of these things, because the tissue turnover is so sluggish and slow. There's too much waste sitting, and the liver is congested and not processing properly. So for all of these things, you can cure it with some magnesium and vitamin C to upregulate the removal processes, and that goes away. This is the joke. This is how simple it can be to support the terrain and get the process finished. Like Dr. Lanka did a control experiment. He said, none of these shots have done any control experiments. That's not good science. So he did the control experiments, and he found that when you remove the tissue from someone and you put it in a petri dish and you do exactly what they do in the lab, which is adding all kinds of antibiotics and all sorts of other medium and things that shock the mixture. So they're trying to stabilize it. They're actually making the end product by doing that. And he found all of those same diseases in one sample of someone who was considered healthy. So he found what they're calling HIV sequence. He found what they're calling SARS-CoV, whatever. He found all other SARS. He found all kinds of blends of things. So then imagine you come with symptoms, and they're assuming that the symptoms are this, right? Oh, if you have HIV, you have a Kaposi sarcoma, or you have, a certain type of other cancer, or you have a respiratory thing, or you have your hair falling out, or whatever the symptom picture is. And they'll say, it seems like it's that, or let's see your lifestyle. Like the HIV screening is so biased. If they think you're gay, or you're, from Africa or something, automatically they're going to screen you for it. They're going to look for it. And they're always going to find what they're looking for, especially if they upcycle the threshold. The same thing with the antibody hopes. The antibodies are part of your own cell lineages, again, pleomorphic cells that change shape to help remove wastes. So when you're poisoned, you will have antibodies. So that's why when you get poisoned by the shot, you're going to have an positive antibody titer. Of course you are, because the body's going, holy crap, get this crap out of here. And let's get it, all the different modes that we get rid of stuff we're going to do. And so they're saying, now you're protected. That's clever. But on the other hand, they'll say, if you come and you haven't had a thing, they're going to say, well, let's see if you're protected, or let's see if you have a disease, one way or another, depending on if you're having symptoms or not. And this is where it's terrible science, right? So if you come in and say, I'm not sure, I've been feeling under the weather, maybe let's screen you for a few things. And some of them pop back. It's like, well, you have antibodies for this. That means you're now infected. It's like, okay, so I'm infected, which means I'm sick, right? okay, but that's similar sort of approach. I mean, there's different monoclonal antibodies and all these different whatever. Again, they make it sound so sophisticated and like they know what they're doing and it looks like that and therefore it's that. And it's bollocks. It's literally, it's garbage. If you want to burn books, it's that crap. And then they make all of this froth from all this fake science. And then of course they apply certain principles to see if they can, get rid of the antibodies. And then they found their, their technology to give you the cure. And this is what Pasteur did. This is what the fraud Louis Pasteur did. He literally took damaged, like he poisoned a rabbit, and he took almost 1/3 of that rabbit brain and put it in a healthy dog that he tied to a pole, and that's already going to be stressed in a public forum, injects that. So much of the material was injected into the dog's brain, it started oozing out the other side. The dog starts to convulse, of course, because it's a nervous system poison. And so frothing at the mouth and convulsing. And then he says, this is rabies. This is rabies. And it just so happens I have the antidote for it in this shot. And this is there's no difference what they're doing today with the scam before us now. It's a problem reaction solution Hegelian dialectic game that they love because it works, because the gullible people who still fall in for superstition and magic and go to sorcerers for their suppression believe it. And that's all they need, is enough of the population to be gullible enough to believe it, and to assume, to make grand assumptions that somehow these higher up people in white coats know what they're talking about. That's it. Now you have the lie, and the lie is established. So same thing with chemo, same thing with all that stuff. It's just being poisoned. So the body goes into shock, and the symptoms that are being expressed will stop. And then, hey, we cured you. We stopped your symptoms. Aren't we awesome? And for some reason, there's some divorce in the mind of the participants where they can't see the connection between being poisoned and then the effect. It's really warped. I mean, even if they get the shot and they're like seizing and Bell's palsy, and they still like, what's happening? I don't know. We better go for testing. It's like, what? Yes. No, you just poison yourself and you can't figure it out because it's just safe and effective. So it can't be that. It has to be something else. Like when the baby dies from SIDS because it had its shots at 3 months, couldn't be that because the doctor said it couldn't be that. Yeah. So therefore it's thrown out as even a possibility. That's insane to me.
Well, you know what's even more insane, I'll one up you on that, is the people who have paralysis in their arms, or they have had significant symptoms after the first shot, and they say, well, when I'm feeling better, I'm going to go get my booster. What? Like, what the hell? Are you kidding? Yeah. I mean, you just want to beat your head against a wall sometimes, but I mean, at this point, I think, there's a prayer and then you're moving on, because there's no hope in that case, right? There's no hope. They've got another time to come back and finish their business, whatever that looks like, right?
Well, they've given their power away to authority, which means they've lost their own internal barometer of checking in. They're not checking in with themselves. They're not asking, could it have been, maybe that doctor's not right? Like maybe that authority is wrong. They're never doing that, because to them, there's an internal sense or feeling of betrayal in their loyalty to the system. And when you're programmed, a certain type of programming in children is you just behave your parents no matter what. Doesn't matter if they're wrong, doesn't matter. You believe your parent, you trust and believe your parents, and that's it. And it doesn't matter. So that's been transferred into the state and into other authority figures, right? And and also we're tribal. We want our group dynamic is important to us. Our social sphere is important. Why do you think they've attacked our social interaction so severely to destabilize us? Because our group dynamic supports us. And so imagine you're the only one starting to question, but all the other lemmings, they will never question authority. They will never question their parents. They're infantile inside. Yeah. And so, but they'll start to shun you and attack you for having a difference of opinion, or actually maybe wanting to have a debate, or let's toy with the idea. They won't even toy with it. Like I go all over with all kinds of deep topics, and they will get offended, immediately offended. They've not studied the topic. They've not read any books. They've not dove into any of it. And immediately like, you're an idiot. And they just start throwing it ad
Yes.
hominem attacks at you.
Yes.
It's like, well, are you seeing yourself?
Yes.
You're coming from absolute blind and willful ignorance and attacking someone who has something of a different idea than you. That's a problem with you, not with the person who's done their due diligence and is actually brave enough to go against the herd, which means that your own social sphere could be discombobulated and you could be having a lot of stress and strain, which I mean, I've gone through tons of that.
Yeah,
you know?
I think there's a lot of people on here and a lot of people that registered. You know, we had over 550 people registered for this event, which tells me this is important to people to get the truth on, right? Because, you know, and we're talking about the tribal thing, and that comes from so long ago. Like if you didn't have a tribe, you died, right? Well, they've taken our tribes and they've separated us. This is all on purpose, right? They've disconnected us. They've made us, they kind of feel like aliens in our own worlds right now. And that is, if you don't have, you know, faith, I will say, if you're not convicted and you're not standing firm and grounded and you don't know how to reach out and find your people, that can be devastating. And thus the increase in suicides and deaths of despair and all of the discord that's happening between people today, right? This is what they want. This is what they want, you know? And so one of the things I tell people myself is stop getting into the fear space. Okay. Stop going over there. Don't go over there anymore. If you're surrounded by people that are going to treat you that way, find other people to hang around with, right? Find people that are going to, you know, lift you up as you lift them up and keep forging ahead for the truth. Yeah. I mean,
you have to be strong enough on your own 2 feet. This is a test for those people to go, okay, I feel differently, but I'm going to try to I'm going to try to communicate myself in a loving way and watch my ego. So it all comes down to doing the inner work on yourself, ultimately, the whole thing. It becomes irrelevant because what ends up happening, even though you're going in a different direction and you might lose those people in your life, what ends up happening is so much more beautiful because you actually start to attract people who do get it or who are going to support you and who do want to have open debate about things and who will not throw you under the bus just because you have a difference of opinion. Like when you start to do the work on yourself, your external projection will change accordingly. And that is nature. You know, that is what we are, and identifying our power and that we are manifestors, that we actually our thoughts, our feelings, all of the things that come out of us or exude out of us affect the projection, and that this is a place of illusion. This whole place is all lies and illusion. And I think the game is us trying to navigate through the lies to find ourselves ultimately. And we wouldn't go through the maze and we wouldn't do the work if it was just easy, because we're not designed like that. It's like the pain guides us, the suffering guides us. You know, we're not at a place where we can hold enough love inside of us that we enjoy the pleasure to an extent where we can handle it. Like even in Chinese medicine, there's something called excessive joy, and excessive joy can damage the heart. Right? So there's a certain give and take and a balance in ourselves that we're to season us, and it comes through struggle. And so the struggle though shapes you, right? It etches you, it makes you into something.
Yes.
That's very, very valuable. If you've seen people who've gone through very tough, you know, and come through the other side, you see the resolve in them. They're unshakable, right? They have, and they're behind their eyes is wisdom. Like they come through with something. And so it's not for the faint of heart, but everyone has it in them. They just have to connect with God. So they're not alone. They have guides, they have God, there's more to what we are than just the individual. And be brave and stand up and say, well, I'm starting to research in this direction. And if you're interested, I can share it with you. If you don't want to know about it, you don't have to know about it. But that's going to result in different decisions in my life. And if you're mature, then you'll present it to your partner or your family in that way. And if they come across with narcissism or, you know, slinging poo like monkeys, then at some point you have to make a decision. What do you allow into your life? Do you love and respect yourself enough to not allow abuse into your reality? And so there's so many parts that this opens up. But, if you want to just study some of the history, like, read about Béchamp versus Pasteur, read about the history of how the germ theory came to be, dive deep into the religiosity and the cult-like behaviors that have come through Egypt and still are here now. And then read, Lenka's studies, Don Lester and David Parker's work, What Really Makes You Ill. They've done excellent work with that, as we mentioned. There's so many resources. Just begin somewhere. Yep. And you're right about fear. Like, there's nothing to fear. I had an experience, and not just one, but of a friend. And he had said, I got really sick yesterday. I had diarrhea, I had stomach cramps, I had a fever, I had a sore throat, I was vomiting. And so was my housemate. And I said, did you eat anything? I wonder, and, I'm automatically go, well, I must have picked something up, right? Like, okay, well, that's an assumption. So let's just put that aside. What else could it be? Did you have any common exposures? You had some water leakage in your house the other day. Do you think it might be related to that? I don't feel that that's okay. Did you meet anyone together? Oh, well, her family came over. I said, oh, interesting. Did you all eat something together? No, we didn't have the same food. So it's probably not a food issue. I said, well, did she have the same symptoms? Yes, same symptoms. I said, so were they, did they get the shots? Did all of it? He stopped and went, oh yeah. He's like, they are all double bead, every last one of them. I said, yep. Oh, so you were poisoned. Because when you're around someone who's laden in poison, the body is going to try to get rid of as much of it as possible through the respiratory system in gases, out through the skin that you can get through touch contact, through the bowels, if they use the toilet, the washroom, so forth. These things are going to be oozing out of these people for a certain amount of time. And you could easily just be, even their electromagnetic fields. We know a lot of the people with the double jabs are presenting with high EMF readings, or even magnetic readings. And that can affect your energy field, which, again, you got to clue in. There's more to us than just what is this substance? What does this matter? What does this mean? Well, everything has a frequency, everything has a field. So what's happening with the interactions of the fields that might have triggered an illness inside of you that made the body need to purge and need to get rid of that immediately? Like, look at the reaction. It was that same night.
Yes. So that's the part that people are getting hooked up on, Amanda. More than anything, this is the part I believe that people are so confused about, and they're getting hung up on it is, well, how am I catching it? And it's like, I didn't even touch them. We just were in the same room together, and I got sick. And so did my, this. And I got a message through email today, and she said, it was like no sickness we've ever had. It was my husband and I, we went to a Father's Day event or something like that this year. We were so sick. And she said, there's something inside of me that makes me feel like we were poisoned. I don't believe in any of this nonsense, but I don't know how to explain it. And it's hard for me to, to basically say I was poisoned, but I don't know how. So I know bite-sized pieces. Can you explain that? How is it happening? Because it happened in my house. I've got my nephew and my son have both been around, double jab people, and they both lost their sense of smell and taste. My son felt bad for about 24 hours. My nephew, it took almost 3 weeks for him to kind of start feeling back to normal again. Yeah. So, it is confusing for people who aren't in this space you're talking about, that energetic field, that this is just a, casing we're walking around, and there's a lot more going on.
That's what I mean. Like, what the programming does is immediately you go to your baseline assumption, say, well, I must have caught something. That's it. Everyone assumes it. There's no questioning of it. The end, that's the story, right? And everyone runs with the story. And you hear it in the common discussion all the time. I picked up this, or I caught that, or I came down with this, or whatever. And nobody questions any other possibility. And if you were to do proper science, you would realize that if you're exposed to poisons or toxins, whether it's air, water, food, vibration, or energy field, your body needs to maintain homeostasis at all costs, and it will produce symptoms to do so. And there's multiple ways that you can get poisoned, and it's not far-fetched. Now, if your nutritional status is high, if you've already been detoxing, doing coffee enemas, I've been talking a lot about urine therapy lately. If you've been doing intracellular detox, like I have my Picana products for the spagyrics I find very powerful, that clean out the inside of the cells of all the organs. If you've been very rigorous about your lifestyle, you could handle a certain amount of poison exposure and not have overt, obvious symptoms. You might sleep a little longer, or maybe had a bout of diarrhea and that's the end of it. Or just feel a little off and you don't know why, or maybe you just want to fast, you don't feel hungry. Your body will tell you, but it's subtle. But if your nutritional status is low, if you're already filled to the brim with poison, that tipping that over doesn't take much extra into your system to do that. And your body needs resources in order to cleanse, including zinc, which it will create anosmia or a loss of taste and smell, especially whatever the poisons they're using here this round that really uses up a lot of zinc, whatever it is. So imagine you're poisoned with something. It's very specific type of poison. And if you were to, go and look on a pub chem and look up the poison, you would see, how does the body get rid of said poison? Does it need to use this cofactor and go through the liver? Does it prefer to go through the skin? Does it use fat, or is it water soluble? You would find information about that, and that would use a certain amount of nutrients. And if you're depleted in any of those nutrients, then your body is going to start to use mucus and its other methods to remove or even store, which is kind of the cancer, going down the cancer and heart disease kind of path. If it can't get rid of it, then you get into chronic disease states, right? So be happy if you have symptoms, because that means it's working. If your mechanisms are broken because you don't have the resources to do it, then the long-term disease situations really begin to play out. And people have a very hard time making the connections between their nutritional deficiencies and a long-standing progressive disease that could take a decade even to really produce inside the body. And this is where we have a lot of issues. And even with of course, with the medical cartel, they're the stupid as can be. They can never make the connections between a shot you got in childhood and the fact that your tonsils are rotting from that, which the MMR will do a lot of the time. And then when they take them out, because that's their solution to everything, cut and poison it more, and then you start to get lymphatic cancers and diseases, they still can't make the relationship that they did it at the very beginning of life. And that was just a slow progression going along to degrade you.
Yeah. So I started in 2020, I started when I saw what was going on, and I realized we were going to have to, beyond bobbing and weaving and trying to adapt every single day, we're really going to have to do a massive shift in the health and wellness space. And as a coach, for me, it was really easy to start talking about health and medical freedom. And one of the things that I talk about is, without shame and judgment of yourself, we have to start taking responsibility. So I think part of the problem is that, like you said, we have to look at our mineral status. We have to look at our instincts. We have to look at what we've not been looking at. And that's hard for people. Like, I'd rather not look over there. Let me just take this pill and get rid of it. Let me just take this. I don't want to have to change. I don't want to have to look at the dark, horrible places in my life that might be damaged from trauma, or the decisions that I've made to get myself in this state of disease. And one of the things, I went to a freedom event last week, and I had a table there, and on my card, it basically said, health and medical freedom starts with you. Are the choices you're making telling them that they can take your freedom? So if you're standing on a corner all day long with a red, white, and blue sign telling the world that you want your freedom back, and then you leave and you go to Wendy's or you buy crap food, are you really telling them you want your freedom? No, you're basically saying, I'm going to stand out here with this sign, and then I'm going to give you more of my power by choosing the things that you gave to me to make me sick. So that's where I'm fighting on my end as a health coach. Is I'm trying to get more coaches, more wellness professionals to listen to what I'm saying here and help teach people how to be more empowered and take back their control and their power. And I'm struggling with that. I got to tell you, Amanda, I'm struggling because I have a school for health coaches. I am trying to get more people to start to work this way, to get back to the basics of care, right? And it's like, even coaches and naturopaths and people like that, no, we're going to do supplements and elimination diets, and we're not going to talk about, getting back to the basics of what this is what we need to do. I'm sorry, but you throw an elimination diet at someone who's eating fast food 7 days a week, and you're looking for absolute failure. We have to meet people where they are to help them get to where they want to be in a way that feels good to them. This isn't about our agenda anymore. Influencers, I've got nothing for health and wellness influencers anymore, and all their stuff that they're doing, I've lost that. So So
Yeah,
staying with,
fundamentals, foundations, fundamentals. But you know, the reason I would use any supplement, which I do, is because of that exact thing you said, that people would rather take a pill. So when
Mhm.
you're molding someone or helping them to get to that lifestyle change, which takes time, then
Sure.
you're okay, let's just at least get your fundamental nutrition up, like start taking the B multi and your magnesium, and like let's just work on that. And now let's talk about where you can get that from your food, or what could you start growing in your garden so your soils are rich, so you get your potassium and you get your, you know, micro minerals and so forth. So let's do a little bit of both. Let's get you first off the poison. So where all the poisons coming in, out, 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 out. Let's get your nutrition working on that. And it takes, I know you're just going to go buy some apples, you're going to go buy some, you're going to start where you can. And in the meanwhile, let's get your strength up. And then that helps their willpower come up because they're feeling better. They're out of pain, or they're sleeping better. They're thinking clearer. Then they can start to plan the lifestyle. So usually I put people on, you know, regimes for about 6 months. And that gives them some time to feel better and then start to do like, what water are you drinking, and research. Some people want to research all of it, and that takes time too, you know.
Yeah. And I
So
agree with you. Yeah. It's like crutches for your, like taking enzymes, it's crutches for your pancreas while you're trying to get things back on track.
Exactly.
Yeah. And, but it's called supplement for a reason. It's not
Yeah.
called food in a pill for a reason. We need to
Yeah.
be eating the things that we need unless we can't get them essentially. Right.
Yeah. Or breathing right, or detoxing regularly. You know, you can do fasting or intermittent fasting when you're already, you know, in a good nutritional place, right? To rest the digestive organs and allow them to heal and all of that sort of thing. But yes, it's tailored depending on what systems are the weakest. And you want to, so always try to assess where, and it's usually the liver. I mean, it's usually mostly. So if you could just start on liver, you're going to get somewhere. You're going to start to see. And that's, again, why it's such a sham to go to half these practitioners. And again, what they've done to the naturopaths, you know, I was there and it's the same story, just it's like green allopathy, which is like, here's all of your symptoms of this box of a disease that you're looking for or screening for. You're not really reading the whole individual. You're not assessing necessarily what organs need support. You're trying to label. And I'd never want labels. The only way I would do labels and tests is if it's a real odd situation and there's something just not quite clicking. And then, but it's like a 1% of cases where you're going to want the blood work, or you're going to want any of these tests. Mostly you're just looking properly, what the skin looks like, what the gums look like, you know, if you can tell if someone's blood deficient just by looking at them. So many people, so many women especially, are blood deficient. Start building blood, which is stomach and spleen, you know, and what are you eating and not eating? And you have herbs outside your door. So go learn a few and get them into your lifestyle. You'll get lots of minerals right there, you know.
Yeah.
There's a lot to do.
So tell me this, you know, when it comes to, you know, supporting specific parts of the body, people, you know, doctors like to treat in pieces, you know, it's almost like they think our head's not connected to our body. Any good advice for people about the mindset, about how, because I believe the body speaks to the mind. I mean, the mind, you know, the body speaks the mind. If the mind is thinking something, the body's going to show you what that is in some capacity. You know, it's one reason I dealt with chronic elbow pain for 9 months. I was like, okay, I haven't done anything. I knocked it on a corner. Okay. That's a little bit of an insult or an injury. This is outside the scope of what should be happening. What's going on in my life that makes me feel like I can't support this, you know, like digging into the emotional stuff, looking at what the cause could be for outside of a medical, and like you said, allopathic reason for this to happen. I never went to the doctor or anything like that. And then did some personal work on myself and was like, oh my gosh, that's it. You know, that's it. That's where it came from. It was gone the next day. I'm like, what is this, a miracle? Right? No, it's you looking at your body and saying, tell me the message. What is it that you're trying to tell me? Or what am I trying to avoid? So I'm trying to focus here instead. So do you have any advice for people about how to get out of the head space of worry? Because like you said, I came down with it. Oh, I've got this or whatever. How do we turn that dialogue around in our minds and help people to do that so that we don't go down that rabbit hole?
Well, instead of when you get home from work and do the dinner and do what you put the kids to bed or whatever, when you have an hour or two in the evening to yourself, don't put Netflix on. Contemplate. Who contemplates? My contemplation time is precious. It's quiet contemplation where I'm either reflecting, writing in a journal, meditating, or just sitting and out in nature and thinking and just thinking. And that's it. I'm just with myself and contemplating, because then you begin to notice your own witness. So you become the witness to the self. I did a video on this specifically that you can find on yummy.doctor. I think it's about, if you just type in ego, I think it's 2 parts. It'll help. I go through all of the different things that you start to do to witness yourself, to develop what's called the second attention, and notice yourself. Lovingly rewriting the judge, the inner judge, so that you're not doing one of your parents' voices, which is usually nasty, like you're so stupid, or why would you do that? Oh God, you're such an idiot, or whatever the berating voice is. Change that into the inner child work, which I think we've touched on at one time, where you're like gentle kid gloves with your inner child. Say, I've got this, you're okay. It's okay to make mistakes. You were wrong. And that's allowed, because that's how you become a master. You make mistakes, and you change your voice into something that's more supportive. So you become an ally to yourself rather than a self-berating, hating person. But you have to contemplate. You have to have quiet time. You can't be constantly stimulated by screens.
No.
And that's what they've wanted, is that short attention span. And you have to constantly be stimulated to feel like you're part of the conversation. Again, using our social feelings, like needing to be tribal, to lure us into, posting our dinner on Insta or whatever. I think when that fails, when finally the internet is so destroyed that it's not worth anything anymore, I think we'll actually have a big sigh of relief.
Yeah, that's how I felt when I took all the social media off my main phone, and my screen time went down by 80%. Now it's even down more. It's like, sometimes I don't even know where the phone is for work, and I've been making this move slowly away from there and into quiet private groups like Mighty Networks, where we can talk about this kind of thing, and holding events where I get to be with people. I believe, and I put something up last year. It was like, connection is the new antidepressant. I think people forget that connection is what we're meant to be doing. We're meant to be together. We're meant to connect with each other, to share our energy, the good energy, and love. I mean, love is totally, it's just not, it's an afterthought, anymore. People are too busy being angry and trying to one up everyone and all of those things. It's just so much ick going on in the world right now. So let's do this for just a moment. So when we're talking to people who have, there's a lot of house divide, right? We talked about this, divided homes right now. We've got lots of married couples. One's getting the jab and one's not. And I don't remember who it was. It might've been, was it you? Someone said in an interview I did recently that sleeping with a vaccinated person is like sleeping with a Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Was that you that said that on our last interview?
Yeah.
Yeah. So can you elaborate on that just a little bit? I know we talked about the energy thing, but for those people who are in those situations, can they protect themselves, and how can they protect themselves?
Yeah, I have a few like this, and it's not easy, because a lot of individuals will settle. They'll say, well, this situation ticks off enough boxes. This relationship ticks enough boxes that it's valuable enough for me to stay despite the other boxes not being ticked. Especially if you're older and you feel like, you might not meet someone again, or it's hard to meet someone. And so there's reasons why people stay together, all kinds. Personally, I'd rather be alone than be with the wrong person, but that's how I am. But I understand that it's different. There's different reasons why you would be paired. And so a couple of these individuals are in that scenario, and they're having chronic issues, sleeping next to them, health issues, skin issues, itchiness, all kinds of problems, or their cycles are off, or periods, or extra bleeding and that sort of stuff. The problem is when you have to make a decision: do you love yourself enough to walk away from that situation? Why are you okay with being with someone who doesn't want to wake up and who wants to continually poison themselves? What is it in you that is thinking that that's more valuable to you than your own sense of peace and health, right? So there's damage being done. You're sacrificing yourself. to some degree. So you have to really start to think about that. I know a lot of people that are selling their houses, divorcing their spouses and getting out because they love themselves enough in their reality and truth to say, I'm not going to hurt myself anymore with this. This is ridiculous. And it is it's an event. It is a changeover event where the people who are going to stay asleep are going to go into the culling, and the people who are awake are going to break off and form new societies. And that's what we're seeing. So you have to make a decision. Do you want to be in the new societies, in the new way of doing things, and the new systems that have to be built? Because the controllers, they're batshit crazy. Like they're literally insane.
Yeah.
Okay. And they're running our economy right now.
Yeah.
And they're doing commerce with ships that are won't come to port. And where do you think that's going to go? It's not going to continue. It's not going to get better. They're not going to go, oh, you know what? Whoops. We made a mistake.
Whatever.
Oh, we better stop printing money. Oh boy. No, they're going to crash this ship. And so you've got to prepare. I mean, I've been preparing for 10 years. I already saw this long ago coming. So, so I think you have to think a little bit bigger than what the Cosby Show maybe taught you about, or Family Ties. I'm a Gen Xer, so I grew up on this like family values thing, and you stick by and whatever. But you have to start to go, whoa, what was I programmed into? And go to work, come home, the whole game, and the whole game is changing. Yeah. And I know that's scary for people.
It is.
Everything, like how you get sick is changing, what you have to do for your health is changing, how you have to eat is changing, what your sleep regime is, what screen time you have, your contemplation time. There's all of these things that for people who are just waking up, that's difficult, because I've been doing this most of my life. So kudos to those who are waking up because of this, because that's a real overwhelm that can be extremely a big mountain to climb. Yeah, but it's still doable.
It's interesting to me how, we turned into the woo-woo people. Like that's all woo-woo energy. Oh, you're getting sick from someone's energy, whatever, So is it fair to say, just kind of put this into simple terms, is it fair to say that the more toxic your internal environment is, the more the heavier your body burden is, the more susceptible you are when you get near someone who has had the jab, the more propensity you have for having more symptoms? Because this is what I've heard, repeatedly. I even have a dear friend, someone I love. She's hopefully she still is. I don't know. My ride or die. One of my ride or dies, right? I've told her all along, I don't believe this. I don't believe that you can get sick from a virus. I don't believe it. I just don't. And you're the person that turned my mind about that, Amanda, honestly. And she had someone very close to her pass away. And I didn't hear from her for a long time. And I messaged her like, hey, what's up? And she said, we lost someone, and I know who that person is. We lost someone last week. I know how you feel about this. I am completely changed from this, Carmen. And I said, I'm so sorry. I'm here if you need me. Please let me know if there's anything I can do. But now I don't hear from her very often. Our relationship has changed. And what I'm hearing overall is this is like no sickness anyone has ever had. This is like nothing I've ever had. I've never been this sick. It's the worst thing I've ever experienced. Are those people just heavily burdened toxicity wise? Are they just super internally sick? And then pushed over the edge?
Be careful though what people will tell you, because people forget their sicknesses. This is one thing I learned as a healer. I would have someone end stage 4 cancer, serious like pain syndromes. They'll talk like that. They'll say, this is the worst. You help them, they heal completely. They're back to their happy lives, and they completely forget how they felt, because there's a repair mechanism inside that actually erases the trauma when you really heal. It actually, you can't remember it, right? You can't remember that level of pain. And like so birth. Right.
Or we'd never do it again.
Right. Exactly. Great analogy, like giving birth. Okay?
Yeah. Maybe I remember how painful it was because I never gave birth again. I don't know, but
well, I said when I gave birth, I'm like, well, I won't be doing that ever again. And then soon after, I'm like, I could have another. I mean, that wasn't that bad. I'm here, aren't I? You rationalize it. And so just be careful when people say things, because it's also like a mind meme that people get onto as well. This is the worst I've ever had. Well, how do you know? Do you remember all your other flus that you've had? Because I've had quite a few when I was growing up, and I would say the same thing. This is the worst I've ever felt, or, other people would say I've had something linger. And so sometimes when things linger, say it's the worst I've ever had because it's long, because it's lingering, right? So careful on the phrases that we're hearing from. I don't believe anything anyone's saying, because it's all catchphrases and it's all programming, right? I mean, even sometimes God, I feel like I have to go and watch like a show or something I would never normally watch, because I have to get something of the propaganda. I have to understand how they're doing their propaganda. So I'll submit myself to certain TV arrays, right? So I got called to watch this Nancy Drew series. Okay. I don't know if I'll go any further, but so the first season of it, and this is before the scam hit, and they're already dropping the words "stay safe" into the early programming. So this is before "stay safe" and social distancing. And they're putting the words into the common thought ahead of time. So 60%, 61% of the internet is fake. Okay, is fake accounts, bots, 61% false history, fake websites, fake. Okay, AI run, and they're ruining our internet, by the way, because of this. So imagine now you're on Quackbook or whatever, and you start typing, I got this cold or whatever. I'm not feeling good. I don't know. And then a bot comes in and says, this is the worst flu I've ever had. Right. And then on another page, this is the worst, this, and then this becomes the story. And a lot of this is just bot accounts. So, and then people get it in their head, and now they're feeling sick, and they want to be part of the tribe too. And it's the worst. Definitely. Yeah, you're right. It's the worst, right?
Yeah.
The mind control, you gotta, as soon as I hear a common statement being said by multiple people, I don't believe it for a second. Immediately I'm like, okay, taking that with a grain of salt, who was programmed here? Because if these awake people talking like that, no. Even if I got ill, I wouldn't speak like that. I would say, wow, thank God my body's working, and where did I slip up in my nutrition? Or I guess I haven't been doing my coffee enemas lately, or, I stopped my regime with this food, or blah, 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 or I'm under all this stress. Maybe it's time for some more self-care. This is how I'd be talking. I wouldn't be outwardly victimizing myself by saying, poor me, it's the worst thing I've ever gone through. Whoa,
Yep. Yeah. You know what I do when I don't feel good? And I have a question about this too. Are you good on time for a little bit longer? Are you good? Okay. One of the things that I do is the minute I start to not feel okay, I go to bed. It's almost like my ex-husband and my son used to be like, where are you going? I'm like, I don't feel good. I'm going to bed. I will abandon everything. I shut down the computer. You're on your own. And I would just wander off to bed, and that's, to me, I just listen to that instinct that I just need to rest. I need my lemon ginger shilajit tea. I need all of these things, right? I need these things. But one time, and this comes from a group of wellness influencers and naturopathic doctors and all that, and there are some good naturopathic doctors out there that understand what you talk about. Okay. So I'm not shunning the whole entire industry here, but I was told one time, because I hadn't been sick in so long, and this is recent, that there's something wrong with my immune system. You're not healthy enough to get sick, or you're not healthy enough because you're not sick. You never get sick, because knocking on everything, I don't. And so I heard that, and I was like, I automatically, Amanda, I have to admit, I went, is there any truth to that? Why would that be true? That doesn't feel right to me. Where does that even come from?
Well, we're actually taught that in naturopathic college. That is one of the teachings.
What?
One of the teachings for cancer screening is never getting sick. So when someone comes into you and you're doing their intake, right? You ask them, when was the last time you had a cold or flu? Oh, I never get sick. That's supposed to be a red flag for screening them for cancer. But here's the caveat. These are people who eat A&W like 3 times a week and smoke and drink alcohol and drink 5 coffees a day and don't sleep enough and have constipation. I mean, these aren't healthy people. Now, if I had a healthy person come in and say, I just finished my sauna and my enemas and my juicing and I sleep, 8 hours and I do meditation and yoga or whatever, and I never get sick, I'd be like, yeah, well, what do you need from me?
Yeah.
Some emotional counseling, what do you need? Right? Because then they shouldn't get sick. So be aware that there's 2 sides of the spectrum of never getting sick. So this is why the training needs to be done correctly for naturopaths. You can't just blanket that statement. It's because when someone who is eating like crap and has a crappy lifestyle never gets sick, it means their body doesn't even have the energy in it to purge. That's not good. That means the wastes will store up, and that is a cancer screening situation.
Okay.
That's what that means.
That makes sense. So so someone had messaged on a freedom board one day, I'm going to go and donate my antibodies because I've got the monoclonal antibodies or something crazy like that. What is going on with this? I said, why? Hello, everyone. Have we learned nothing since 2020 hit? And you're going to run out and let them inject you with something else? What are you thinking? Where did this monoclonal antibody, thing come from that makes people think that it can fix or prevent or whatever? What are they anyway, by the way?
The antibody deception is huge. I can share with you some information about it, but ultimately, like I was saying, there are our own pleomorphic somatids. They're from our body, and that they're shapeshifters. So meaning they're pleomorphic or polymorphic means that you have a baseline cell, like a pluripotent cell, which when I talk about somatids and microzyma, which not too many people do because they ignore an entire lineage inside the living blood. They don't look at the living blood, of course. They only look at diseased, broken down bits in microscopes that, heat tissue and damage the tissue. When you look at the living blood, like Gaston Nasens did and identified a 16-stage pleomorphic cycle that blebs off of our red blood cell, which are red blood cells are really what's doing the majority of the work, then you understand that these mechanisms are triggered into existing to attach themselves to wastes and assist the body in tagging that which shouldn't be there. So they're identifiers. So you'll have different subsets of these 3-arm pronged looking or multiple pronged looking cell structures. And those cell structures are geared to pick up different types of bits. So you have a different type of chemical, or a different type of fat, or a different type of identifier. Because think about it, the body has to metabolize this whatever it is, okay? They have to metabolize it, which means the resources need to be accurate, because if you're going to metabolize a fat soluble thing, you need to have the enzyme systems that will actually do the work of that. And therefore you need the proper catalysts and cofactors to do that thing on that thing. So you're going to tag it differently than a water soluble fraction or another type of a subfraction of the wastes. And that's all the different admixtures of these cellular structures that will again be either removed by the body as waste once the job is done, or whatever is lingering will linger a while and then will fade away and will change shape back into its somatid, to its dormancy. And this is what they are. And so it's like saying, hey, now this is what's interesting about this. Now imagine someone is so sick, okay, that they aren't even able to produce enough material to get rid of the wastes. Their resource count is so low that if they did get a monoclonal antibody from someone else, it could borrow the structure to try to rid the body of the poisons. So technically, it could quote unquote work, but it's not for what they're saying it's for. That's why sometimes immunotherapy, or what they're calling immunotherapy, can actually help people who are in cancer states. Think about it. You have toxic buildup. The body is unable to mount the effect of bagging and tagging, basically, and getting rid of it, right? Now you introduce the immunotherapy, these cells that your body should be able to make on their own, but they aren't. And it goes to work and try to communicate with the cells to produce what's needed to tag and get rid of the cancer. So in a sense, it works. The problem is it never will fix the root cause. And so these things can return again, or the person can get sickly in another way because the nutritional status is never addressed, or the foundational issue is never addressed, which could be deeper than just a nutritional problem. Things could be broken down in a DNA level or another level, right?
A Band-Aid on a gaping wound, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, someone sent me a question and I wrote it down on my calendar, and he said, if you could answer this question, because he had heard you talking about the person in a household, like a whole household gets sick. You had mentioned this in another interview he heard. And he said that you said the carer is the last one to get sick or something like that. Can you
Typically.
Yeah. Why is that? What's that phenomenon about?
Yeah, it's interesting. And I personally, I would love if we could actually do some really cool scientific studies on this phenomenon, because I believe, just like I've, when you witness something enough and you see a pattern recognition,
Yeah.
There's something more to it. You might not exactly be able to put your finger on it, but there's a thing happening that's just very specific. Like, for example, when I talk about my daughter, when she was, I think, under 6 months of age, eating handfuls of freaking dirt. I mean, handfuls of dirt. And she was looking like she was in a trance. And I knew that I had to trust that and let her finish. And once she did it, she never did it again. And I had another couple of women tell me, since I talked about that years and years ago, say, I saw my child do it. I saw them do it. And they were focused in a way that was, I knew it was a reflex, and I knew not to mess with it and just let them do it until they were finished. Right. So it's the same kind of thing. You're like, this is different. There's something about this. So it's the same thing with this household experience. But think about also, you have similar DNA patterns, you have similar lifestyle habits, similar emotional and mental interactions, right? There's a tribal connection going on. In a field, always your fields are overlapping and sharing. And so you can almost think of the family group as one organism, right? Like you see trees, but underground, they're actually one tree. So you sort of think of it like that. And so imagine the buildup and the exposures are similar in these groups that are living together. And then all of a sudden you get either a group exposure inside the household, or one gets a new exposure, comes home, shares the energy drain, so you're picking up, I think I mentioned Hands of Light by Barbara Brennan. If you ever want to, she's clairvoyant, she can see fields, and she drew all the fields. She did all the art, and you can see when somebody either hooks in on you to pull energy to feed off of you emotionally, that's draining, or if someone dumps on you, so say someone went out and it was a crappy experience, they were really upset. They come home, they start sharing that with you, the emotions behind it, and you're empathizing with them, and you can pick that up. So imagine you get dumped on by a family member, and that's enough of a toxic group load to set off a cycle, to set off a trigger that happens through your body, through a mechanism. Same thing with children who hang around each other. Often you'll see they go through some of the similar fevers or chicken pox or whatever. They'll start to go through it as a run. Because it's just more advantageous as a group to do that. And what I said that before, we used to be nomadic, and it's better if everyone just gets it over with. But usually there's one that doesn't go down. There's usually one as a caretaker. And it usually tends to be the matriarch generally, or a female tends to be the one that doesn't get it until later. There's a delay. So could we study that and see, like, maybe there's actually a mechanism of delay? Maybe they're all triggered and one gets a delay, and that's part of it. Who knows? Or maybe they just go into a service mode and it shuts down the mechanism so that they know they're going to be on duty and they must. And then the second they're doing well, they go, oh, and then that relaxation sets it off. Because have you ever experienced, like I've experienced this, if I ever get anything, which I haven't for a long time, but if I ever did, it was always around Christmas. And why? because work, push harder. You got to come with all your game to
Yeah.
get through it.
Get that
right?
tree up, that seventh tree.
Oh God, I hate the holidays for this stuff, what it does. Did I get enough stuff? Did I make enough stuff? Am I generous enough? Am I giving enough?
Yeah.
Right. And you finally wrap your last present, your last cookie baked. What happens? You get sick.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
You
There has to
finally
be something to that.
relax.
There has to be, because, it's like my partner, Andy, came in town when we were living like 3.5 hours away from each other at one time. He was like, I'm not well. I don't feel good. I'm going to make the drive. I know I'm going to feel better when I get there. You can help me. So he comes in town and I'm like, okay, here's your tea. Here's your this, here's your that. And he was sick for like 3 days. And I just kind of ran around fixing and doing. He went back home like, and I was like, whoa. And I got sick. I think that's because well, first and foremost, come on, women, we can do a lot of things at one time and we don't give up. We're very tenacious, right? We're resilient. We're tenacious. We're going to get it done. So there's got to be something in the DNA that gets triggered or something like that says, oh, sick, all alarms off, all women on board,
Maybe it's just one of those having the extra little X bit on the chromosome or something. We can pull out all the stops.
We can. All right. You have been so generous with your time, Amanda. I could talk to you all day. The last thing I want to do is ask you for about 2 more minutes, however long it takes. And then I'm going to lead people out to your YouTube channel. And in the replay, I'm not going to put anything in the chat today, you guys, because the replay is going to take it. I've got a lot of links. I've got all your websites. I've got your YouTube channel up. I'm going to share the one about how to detox the thing. You did one. It's 2 hours long. Let's give a little hope to people, because I know there are some people here that may have gotten the vaccine, and there are some people here that are in a home with someone and they're worried about them, maybe their child or their spouse, and they have regret, like Mark Steele says, first pray and then what? So can you give a little hope to people that they can indeed heal from this, and that there is hope for people who have already had this, the shot? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's one I was asked to do a live on that topic. So that is the one I did. It's 2 hours, take it in bits. I didn't even get through half the remedies that one could do. Keep in mind, there are thousands and thousands of healing remedies available to support you. And if you aren't doing any of them, you got a big open door before you to invite you into any of those things. And it can be overwhelming. And that's why I did that, to start with some of the basics and just begin there. Just bring those into your lifestyle and know that there's a critical situation happening. But one of the goals of these shots is to build up a tolerance to poison in your body, so that you can hold the graphene in your body, so that the body accepts a poison as its own. That's why they're rewiring the genetic material. And guess what? Your body will reset and revert and always try to correct it. It will always work to correct it. So if you increase your nutritional status and your lifestyle factors, then it will upregulate the removal and help your body recover, and just don't do it again, because they want the boosters endlessly, because they have to continue to pummel the body with it in little bursts as much as possible, so that it holds and takes the material, so that they can do their little AI tech stuff with the 5G network. That's the long-term plan of the shots. The short-term plan is to get rid of a huge proportion of the population. And then there's always going to be a placebo, because they have to, when they're doing an experiment, they're going to have placebo. I think some of my family members that would listen to me, I feel like they got placebo because other than they're a little less connected than normal, they didn't get sick, which I'm so surprised, because unless they're just ticking time bombs and their mechanisms are so broken that, like, there was one story I saw today of a Chinese guy playing pool with another gentleman. He just drops dead of a heart attack, like right on the pool table, like just like that. So it could be something like that, where they're not showing overt symptoms, but you can still repair and offer your body the right things to try to repair as much as possible. So don't, it's tough to be in that position and to be like, oh my gosh, I made a severe mistake. Just own the mistake and then do everything you can to be on top of your detox game and learn about it and how to do it. And I have lots on my blog, how to detox and different ways of detoxing for your lifestyle, what works for you. You know, some people immediately put their foot down, no, I'm not doing that, but then they end up doing that, you know, and notice where you're resisting and notice where your ego gets put on the stage and, you know, pay attention to yourself. And I talked about Sol Luckman and the regenetics method of actually doing tonal therapy or sound therapy to vibrate the cells enough to regenerate DNA. So you can even heal DNA. So of course, you can heal anything. You really, really can. You just need to put your mind to it and do the research and try to carve out some time for yourself to do that. And a lot of us are givers and, you know, do too much. And this is like a doer kind of world where your value is based on how many likes and how much output you give. And we have to get back to slow medicine, slow food, slow lifestyle. And I think we'll be forced into it eventually because this is so unsustainable.
Yeah, I agree. And I've heard that the population is heard to go down to 1 million by 2025. I don't know if that's, you know, I've heard that from several different people that that's the goal, you know, on the depopulation agenda or whatever. And I don't get married to any numbers or anything like that because we don't know where we're getting our information anymore. Nothing seems to be true, you know.
Well, they can have their Georgia Guidestones predictions all they want. I know they're trying other things now, which is interesting, like geo warfare. There's a La Palma situation where there's been a volcano, which you don't see on the news, that is kind of a ticking time bomb potentially for a lot of ships to be damaged. Because if it sloughs off enough, if enough landmass actually goes into the ocean, it will create a large tsunami, and all the ships that have been just sitting, they will be damaged. So I think they're trying different things to destabilize us. But whatever, you know what, they're exposing themselves as they do this, which is wonderful because their code is always to do it behind closed doors in secrecy. And they're not doing that now. They're being brazen. And that's an opportunity for us to take count of who they are, where they are. And, you know, the exposing is something they don't like. So I still feel like there's good to come of this.
Yes.
And that it's up to us ultimately to make the new structures, to step out of the system, to stop feeding the system, like you alluded to, like truthers going to Tim Hortons. Why? What are you doing? Why would you buy something from a corporation that supports segregation? Why, as someone who's in an awake situation, don't do that.
Right.
You know? Yeah. So we're getting there bit by bit. And I think that even in Toronto, people aren't taking it as serious as they used to. Something's changed. They're like, you know, it's kind of getting boring for the trendy Torontonians.
Yeah.
You can only make so many fancy masks for so long before the trend fades away.
Yeah. It's like fashion, you know, all the crazy, the masks that match the outfits and all that stupid stuff. I don't know. I feel like that. I mean, I believe, and this is what I feel, and why I don't have any fear about all of this stuff, is I believe that we are being led back to God, that we are being called back to God, that enough already. Whenever I think about God and I have my conversations, my time is in the morning. I have to peel myself out of my chair. I'm so deep in my books and all that, you know, and reading what's going on. But I feel anytime I think about this, that God is calling me back to myself, back to nature, back to, you know, what he intended for all of us. It's just like enough, like just enough already with all of this nonsense, right? Can we get back to what I intended for you all to be here doing? Loving, connection, nature, all of the things that we've talked about. So yeah, I mean, my gosh, I don't even know how long. I saw that chat flying up and down the whole time. It's flying up. I am going to have a chat script the size of Texas in my saved information. And if you're interested, I'll share it with you, Amanda, because I'm sure there's going to be a lot of great, you know, conversation in there, and probably a lot of kudos. But I just, again, want to thank you. Thanks for spending this time with me. I know how busy you are. I know how valuable your time is. I'm really excited to see about the courses that you're coming up with and the work that you're doing. I understand you've got some staff to help you now, so you can put your genius where your genius belongs, right?
Yeah.
So I'm excited about that. And, and I just wish you the absolute best to the end of 2021. And thank you. And I hope that maybe in 2022, when you have some time, you'll come back and talk again.
Yeah, sounds great, Carmen. I love our chats and the work that we're doing to help connect people and get them out of fear and working forward in their lives. And I'm excited about what we're building. And once my staff is trained, I'm in sort of a training mode. Then I'll be able to switch gears again and get back to even making new products, which I really love doing, and creating the courses and all of the protocols. And then I'm going to do videos connecting to the protocols so that people can really feel like they know what to do, like similar to my book, where people can feel like they don't have a background in it, but they can feel confident with enough knowledge to start to do it themselves.
Yes.
And that's really what I hope for. And then also working with a lot of nurses and other practitioners that have left or been pushed out of their systems that want retraining in the holistic model, just similar to what you're doing with, the coaching, where like we're training the trainers, or retraining to some degree. And like, okay, here's how we can do home visits, like the doctor's visits, like it used to be.
Yes. Yes. I love that. I love that idea. Absolutely. We have to, lead the way on this and getting back to, again, always back to the basics of care, and before all this nonsense came in and tried to take us over.
Yeah, exactly.
Get back to simple stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Well, yeah. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Amanda. Okay. Have a great end of the year and happy holidays. Don't cook too many cookies and get sick. Okay. Because I'm not going to do it either. All right. Only 2 trees this year. All right. Thanks everybody for being here. Thanks so much for all the conversation in the chat as well. We'll talk soon. Bye now, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.